cucumber castle on the banks of a cranberry sea. And starfish dance under my drawbridge, and blackbirds make nests in my tree. I enjoy being a boy in love with you. Oh, I enjoy being a boy in love with you. In love with you, girl, oh yeah. I live in a purple plum mansion.
Hello there, thrill seekers, and that song was called I Enjoy Being a Boy, and it's by the legendary Banana Splits. If you were a little kid in the 70s in America, you saw the Banana Splits on TV. It was a funny show where people dressed in costumes. There was a gorilla, an elephant, a dog, and something else. I can't remember what the other one was. Anyway, and they had a band, and they played songs, and it was live action. But they showed cartoons, but they themselves, the Banana Splits themselves, were live action. And I bought a CD of Banana Splits songs when I was in Japan, bootleg, and that song was on it, and I loved it, and so I produced my own version, and there you go. And it kind of ties in with the theme of today's video, which is that somebody asked me if I would say something about Zen and creativity. So I don't know if you noticed, but I got a little special effectsy on the video today. I did some green screen effects and stuff. So I will also put that whole thing up as a separate video. So if you look on this channel and you look for I Enjoy Being a Boy, if you want to see the rest of the video, that's where it will be. So I guess you'd call that creative. I don't know. It's what I do. It's the kind of thing I do. And maybe I'm uniquely placed. I don't know uniquely, but anyway, I can talk about Zen and creativity. Is there something crawling around behind me? Anyway, I thought I heard something. Anyway, so let me talk about Zen and creativity from my point of view. Now, I know I've talked about this on the channel before, so I'm going to try not to make this an exact repeat of what I've said before. So let me start with this. The person who asked me to talk about this said, is there anything in the Zen literature about creativity? And now, I'm not an encyclopedia, a walking, living encyclopedia of Zen literature, but I've read my fair share of it, and I can't really recall anything in the sort of ancient canonical Zen literature that specifically references creativity. Now, maybe somebody has. Maybe there's a book out there called Zen and Creativity where somebody has dug out all those comments and things. But I don't think that for people in ancient India, China, and Japan, Korea, the places where the Zen form of Buddhism sort of flourished in the past, they weren't specifically concerned with creativity as a thing. You know, I don't think it's something they thought about. But there is evidence of creativity, and I brought some out for you. Let me show you. Here's Dogen's Shobogenzo. That's 4 volumes. That's the complete 95 chapter version. So that's a lot of literature right there. And here is Dogen's Eihei Koroku, which is another piece of literature by Dogen, and this also contains some of his poems. So one of the things that impressed me about Dogen when I first started studying him was that he was a writer. Okay, so if you look at old Zen literature, what mostly you have is not writings by the teachers themselves. The Buddha never wrote anything. Huineng never wrote anything. Bodhidharma never wrote anything. All these people that you hear about, most of them never wrote anything. It was students of theirs who jotted down things they'd heard from them and then made them into something. Dogen's different. Dogen actually wrote his own stuff. He's like, how that controversy about, well, I don't know, maybe because I'm a nerd, I know about the monkeys. There was a controversy whether they wrote and played their own material. Well, Dogen wrote and played his own material, just like the latter-day monkeys after they, got criticized for not writing and playing their own material. So Dogen he was a writer in the truest sense, because he didn't just kind of jot these things down either. He wrote them, he composed them, he rewrote them, he rewrote them, he revised them. He did all the things that a contemporary writer does, that I do when I write books. You go through all these phases. So that was creativity. That's Dogen's creativity. He also wrote poems. A lot of other sort of traditional Zen outlets for creativity would include things like calligraphy. Kazuaki Tanahashi is a calligraphy master, and he's not a Zen master, but he's a Zen student. Who else? The hell is that behind me? Yeah, you heard it too, didn't you, Ziggy? Okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Kobuchino Roshi, the teacher of my first Zen teacher, he was an archer. So that was another thing. There's tea ceremony and those kind of things. I don't think that Zen creativity has to be limited to that. So I brought out some examples of my own stuff. I've been involved in a lot of creative projects. I mean, from the early days, Zero Defects, the band that I was in and that I'm in because we got together again in 2005. Oh, they're stuck together. We did some albums. This was a real record that we participated in legitimately, voluntarily, and then this is a bootleg that I found in I think I found this in England, but it's you find it in Europe every once in a while, and we had nothing to do with making this, but it's Zero Defects is on that. And then, the most famous thing that we're on, the Peace War compilation. This is still in print, I believe. I think this version is from about 10 years ago, although it came out originally in 1984. So there's that. Then I went on to do Dementia 13, which was, these are two of the Dementia 13 albums. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the other Dementia 13 albums. If I wanted them, I'd have to go find them on Discogs or something and buy them. So I only have the first two. Then I've been in a bunch of films. My friend Piruz makes these movies, and I've been in a bunch of them. My favorite is Zombie Bounty Hunter MD, but I'm also in Shoplifting from American. Oops, sorry, that's Shoplifting from American Apparel. I'm also in this one, Control Alt Delete. So there's that, and I made a movie, Cleveland Screaming. You can still find this. If I remember the URL where you can order copies of this, I'll put it on the screen. So you can still find this as a movie I made about the Cleveland and Akron punk rock scene of the 80s. So, but the one thing that Zen taught me about creativity that was really, really important was that I didn't have to worry about the results. This is a thing that Zen teaches you. Nishijima Roshi was especially hot on this topic, that there is no such thing as a result. In his commentary on the Mura Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, he emphasizes this idea that there's no such thing as a result. I mean, in terms of linear time, you can say that this resulted in that. But in terms of what's going on right now, this is this, and there's no such thing as a result in the real world that happens moment by moment. So, how this translated into my life was, I made 5 Dementia 13 albums. I think I actually recorded, a 6th album. And I had a big fight with the record label, with Midnight Records, over the 6th album. And I finally just said, I don't want to do this anymore. He wasn't paying me royalties. He probably wasn't making any money on them, but at least he could have sent me statements or something to that effect. But I just wasn't working out, and I needed to do something different. So I quit doing Dementia 13 albums, and I got a job in Japan teaching English. And as far as I was concerned, music making was behind me. That was it. I was done. Of course, the first thing I did when I got to Japan was join a little band full of other gaijin who were living in Japan at the time, and bought myself a bass and a guitar. I didn't even bring any instruments with me, so I had to buy new instruments when I was over there. So I did that for a while. Then that band kind of broke up because everybody moved back to America, and one guy moved back to England, the other two moved back to America, and I was set adrift, and I was like, okay, well, this is over. But doing the Zen practice, it kind of occurred to me that why was I making music just for to have a record come out of it? I mean, that isn't the way I started. When I was, 14 years old and started making little tapes, I was the only one who listened to those little tapes. I made tons and tons of cassette tapes between the ages of 14 and 20 or something like that. I think I was 20 when the first Dementia 13 album came out. And they were all just for me. I was the only one who ever listened to them. And I thought, well, why don't I just do that again? And so I bought some equipment and I made a little studio in a spare room in my apartment. And I made this. This is the probably cutest version. I made an album called Hovercraft, a double CD with the 2 CDs, and then I made 2 different covers. This is it. This is Hovercraft. I am the only one. Well, no, there's one other person who's listened to Hovercraft. It was my now ex-brother-in-law, who was then my sister's husband, but they got divorced. He liked it. I sent a copy to him because he asked. I told him about it and he wanted to hear it, and he actually listened to it enough that he could name specific songs and tell me what he liked and didn't like about it. So he actually listened to it. For a while I had a website up offering to sell copies of this, but no one ever bought any. So I gave that up, and that's why I have these 2 leftovers from the copies I made in case I ever sold them. But the point is, it didn't bother me that nobody else would listen to this music. It didn't bother me one bit. I made it because I wanted to listen to it, the same way as I did when I was 14 years old and there was no reason for me to expect it to be heard by other people. Well, then I was 30 years old or whatever I was, and I was like, why am I worried about it being heard by other people? I'm just going to make this for myself. So that was my attitude, and I didn't care where it went. That's the point. So I think for me, what Zen did for my creativity was allowed me to just stop worrying about the results of it, stop worrying about where it goes. This is also worked out in my writing. I wrote novels with the intention of selling them to publishers and trying to become a professional science fiction novelist. Couldn't sell them to publishers, and then I decided to write a book about Zen, which I knew was not going to be a normal book about Zen, and I just wrote it for my own. There is definitely something crawling around in the leaves back there. I hope it's not a tiger or a bear. Anyway, so I wrote it. I wrote Hardcore Zen, or the book that became Hardcore Zen. I always say that because that wasn't the original title, wasn't Hardcore Zen. But I wrote it for myself. I had the idea, as those who've regularly watched this, that I would give it to my nephew, and that maybe I would Xerox a few and make it into like a 10-part zine that I would sell at Tower Records, but I wasn't even sure if I'd do that. That was it. I wasn't worried about the result of it, but I spent as much time, effort, and energy on that as any other project that I ever did for an audience. And this is also inspired by Dogen, because I don't know what sort of audience Dogen ever expected. I once asked Taigen Dan Layton, who is a much better Dogen scholar than me, he's one of the co-translators of this, how many people do you think read Dogen's work when he was alive? I said, do you think it was 50 people? And he said, I think it was far fewer than that. And he's probably right. Maybe Ajo or one of his closest students read the things. They must have, because they helped edit it. But beyond that, who knows? Maybe nobody read, nobody other than those 2 read some of his pieces when he was alive. But he wasn't concerned about that. And he made the work as good as it could possibly be for nothing, for just for the sake of doing it. And that, I think, is where the Zen of creativity comes in, is doing things just for the sake of doing it, for the sake of enjoying the work of being creative. And you can make anything creative. You can make mowing the lawn creative, or washing the dishes creative, or anything, raising a child. I mean, that's a creative endeavor right there. Anything that you happen to do you can make it a creative endeavor. Now, there's one other question that I get related to this, which I think is a kind of a funny question. But it's a question I kind of thought of when I first started, so maybe it's not ridiculous, but to me it seems funny now, is I am a creative person and my art is inspired by the suffering I go through, so I'm worried that if I do Zen practice, I'll eliminate my suffering and therefore eliminate my creativity. Don't worry about it. It ain't gonna happen. You are not gonna eliminate your suffering to that extent. What the elimination of suffering has done, though, for me, is that there's a lot less unnecessary suffering going on. And I could maybe point to songs on, the first early Dementia 13 albums and things that were probably the fruit of unnecessary suffering, of problems and difficulties I'd created for myself that I was reacting to and that I wrote songs about. Okay, sure, that exists. And I have a lot less of that. I have a lot less self-created suffering. I do have some. We all have some. Even the Buddha admitted to having some in his life after he'd become enlightened. But I don't have nearly as much. But that still doesn't stop me from doing things like making these songs for all these videos that I've been doing and working on that. Like that I enjoy being a boy. That was the work of several days of putting things together and figuring out the harmonies and the la 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 la's and all that stuff. Listen to the full version, you'll hear. I'm not a harmony singer by training, so working those out is a bear for me. So there was a lot of work put into that, and I was glad to do it. And yeah, I have an audience, but I know that most of you don't come to watch these things for the songs. You come to watch them for the talk. So but it doesn't worry me. I just do it because I like it. And so yeah, I'm not worried about not having enough angst to be creative anymore. So don't worry about that. You'll have plenty of angst. Okay, and if you want some more angst, if you happen to be in Europe, I'm going there in less than a week, and here are the dates. They're showing up on the screen. I will be in Finland, Germany, France, Belgium, and England. And if you want more information, you can go to the link hardcorezen.info/events. That's where you will find clickable links to get info. And I just got some new updated info on the Finnish talks. One of the Finnish talks at Bar Ö. That's the first talk I'm doing in Turku, Finland. So there's a new link for that that'll get you directly to the place for good information. So click on those. And if you want to support me, because I'm going to Europe, but even though I'm going to Europe and most of the events I am doing, I'm going to get paid for, but not all of them, I'm still going to need your support. So I appreciate that. And I've been showing you the URL, which is on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. You can find my links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts there, and those are really my main ways of making a living, even if I get paid for going to Europe. That's really where it comes from. So I thank you for your support. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't got to pay if you don't want to pay. All right, we will see you next time. Be creative. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Ziggy creatively found a spot in the shade. Hey, Ziggy. How you doing? He didn't like me doing the green screen stuff this morning. It kind of bothered him. So he's being a little aloof today. Anyway, we'll talk to you later, Ziggy, all right? Bye.